After a couple days off to rest and recharge, I'm back with some more Outriders for you. What's going on, everybody? It's What's in a Buzz Lightbeer, and since the game is in somewhat of a holding pattern for both news and fixes, as we are all waiting for whatever Square Enix comes up with to handle that damage mitigation issue, I instead wanted to dive into this Tassi Forbes article that's really a dream patch list of sorts that came down to something like 30 changes he wanted to see put into the game. Don't worry, I'm not going to cover each and every topic for you, but as I read through this list, I have to agree with many of them. But before we begin today's video, I wanted to again thank you for the warm reception you've been showing my Outriders content, and in case you are not yet a sub, please take just a moment to smash that sub button and ring the bell to receive all future upload notifications from my channel. Let's get this one going. Like always, in case you wanted to read through the article in its entirety, I will include a link in the video description. But this all starts off with Tassi, a reporter for Forbes that covers video games, and as of the launch, he has been posting about Outriders. And I was already jotting down some of my thoughts a few weeks ago, but with other obligations, I never got around to posting that video. But as I read through Paul's list, I agree with many of them, but I just wanted to elaborate on a few of these hot topic items and explain why. First up, and if I were to take a poll, I am sure this would be number one on every player's list that plays Outriders and has reached Endgame. That is, have Tiago rotate his legendary pool weekly. Now this is a slam dunk suggestion, as once you do reach challenge tiers and start to progress higher and higher, Tiago becomes an absolutely useless vendor resource. Now I've honestly stopped checking his normal wares, namely due to them being epic quality, whereas I'm looking for common and rare, so I have the most control over the modding process, but the real failure in Tiago's shop are his legendary items. They never update or change, ever. You can buy all of them up one week, and the next week, refresh, he returns with the exact same items. Now, I know for many players, they want Tiago to operate like Xur from the Destiny universe, and that would be just fine with me. He needs a refresh with new items on a weekly basis. And if that is not a possibility, then add a legendary purchase option to all the vendors in the game. Now, I don't think anyone would mind checking with Mercer Acosta or even Noah Dembele as long as they had a new stock to inspect every refresh. Just like with Tiago, the purchases could be made with drop pod resources, as these also accumulate very quickly once you are up and into CT13 content and above. Now on top of this, and if you were at the end game and grinding out those CTs, you should be doing this, but there are simply too many mechanics to engage with to convert drop pod resources, which max at 999,999, into titanium. Players that want to do this must first interact with Tiago, select the drop pod to scrap conversion, hold down the button until they reach the desired amount to cash in. Big issue here I will cover in a second. Then back out of Tiago, run over to Bailey, interact with her scrap to titanium converter, and then hold down the button until it reaches max and OK that transaction. Now, the huge pitfall in all of this is back with Tiago, and that when you do use his drop pod resource to scrap converter, there is no limit to how many drop pod resources you can sell him for scrap. But there is a hard cap for how much scrap your character can hold, 999,999. So if you make the huge mistake of selling him all your drop pod resources for scrap, you are going to lose untold amounts of potential scrap, because once your hard cap limit is reached, that's it. But the game doesn't tell you that, and you can keep exceeding that cap and never know that you were receiving absolutely nothing for your hard-earned drop pod resources. Moving on, and the second item on Paul's list was actually the second item on mine as well, and it is post-campaign, have CT difficulty in the story and drop loot up to 50. Now, Outriders has been repeatedly touted as not being a live service game, but as players have reached endgame, they have found the lack of content to be a real turnoff. By over-leveling the open world enemies, it allows players to once again embrace the hunts and or specific missions, because this is just me being honest with you, when I take my characters that are CT15 capable back into the open world, it is really not a challenge. Even on World Tier 15, the NPCs die instantly because of how my characters have been built up to handle much harder content. Now on top of this possible increase in NPC difficulty for the open world, we also need loot drops to match. If someone is hitting, say the monster hunts on level 50, then level 50 gear needs to drop throughout the hunt. Not like the way it is now where gear always drops below your current level. These two need to match up. Next up on my list, and I think this is number 5 on Paul's list as well, and that's to make Broodmother Bluefire more visible. But I'd also like to add to this, in general, I need some enemies to be more visible. How many times have you died in the Broodmother's blue AoE damage field mainly because you couldn't see it on the ground? Because if you did, you would have rolled away from it and tried to avoid it. I mean, we can all appreciate the beauty of this game, but many times things like foliage or even smaller rock structures obscure what we really need to see, like that deadly blue patch on the ground. Also, many players avoid challenge tier missions that are set in the forest, for not only the reason of not being able to see things like those Broodmother death zones, but also because many of the plants seem to be bulletproof and will cause you to miss your shots on would-be enemy targets and therefore lose your twisted rounds. Now, I'm sure there is a list a mile long of items that needs to be addressed at the studio, but objects deflecting bullets or obscuring our vision of potential attacks needs to be addressed. Next up on my list, and I'm sure this will be a popular suggestion, but in general, legendary drop rates need to be evaluated and in most cases increased across the board. Now, I can personally remember seeing maybe 2 or 3 legendary drops occur in the open world in my 200 plus hours of playtime, despite that somewhat misleading text in the world tier menus showing a 425% increase in the legendary drop rates. But if we're talking about a 425% increase when the normal drop rate is set at say 0.001% or something like that, then the increase of that rate will only increase it to a whopping 4.25%. But I would also like to stress that I am only guessing here what the standard legendary drop rates are truly set at. Maybe somebody can leave me a comment telling us all what the normal legendary drop rates are for the game and what they would be with that 425% drop rate modifier for World Tier 15. Continuing on with this, and without going too far into the subtopic of legendary drop rates on high-level gold tier CT clears, which is frankly abysmal, but in general, we need more access to legendary gear. I will frequently see 3, 4, or even 5 CT14 or 15 gold tier clears yield me absolutely 0 legendary pieces. And then when I do finally get one to drop, it always seems to be a piece of Cannonball or Borealis gear from my Techno that I frankly don't need. I have personally never seen a death shield drop, ever. Not for me and not for one of my squad mates when I'm running in a squad. I've seen them on players' backs and pictures of them on the internet, but I couldn't tell you what that weapon is like. I've also farmed a Kari for my AP Pyro build until I am blue in the face, and I have never, I repeat, never seen a single piece of that gear set drop for me outside of the helmet, and I think that was once. And even that one drop is really diminished because that is the one piece of a Kari you can purchase from Tiago, making it absolutely irrelevant. Now, if players are going to continue to engage with the in-game content, which is challenge tier missions, then the incentives for continuing that grind need to be solid. Burning through the hardest level content in the times expected for 0 of the loot that a player is farming for will soon lead to that player getting burned out and just leaving the game. Now, this could also be tied into this whole Tiago vendor weekly legendary refresh topic, so that if the actual clears don't net a player what they are wanting, they would at least have that second option for getting the gear. If targeted loot farming could also be added into the game, it would greatly reduce the punishing RNG drops or lack of drops many players are seeing. Also, and I know that many of you are going to drop this in the comment section below, I understand that the first priority for the studio is to make the game work on all platforms, because we can discuss all of these wants and desires, but unless you can get into the game and actually play it, none of this matters. I mean, I'm just looking down the road and asking for things that may or may not ever come true. So let's finish up this discussion, and the last thing on my list has everything to do with gear, and this is a real laundry list of items, so here goes. We need loadouts. We need the ability to favorite gear so that we don't mistakenly break it down, and then if possible, we want transmog. Now the first two, loadouts and the ability to favorite items, are an absolute must. Transmog would be nice, but it wouldn't make my life any easier as I play the game. In a game that was built around different mod combos, skill tree class points, and other items, how a game like this does not feature any ability to save your loadouts is truly baffling. Having to manually switch up your entire skill tree and then use Zahedi to mod your gear just to jump between a firearms build and an AP build on the same character is truly nerve-wracking. Loadouts are sorely needed in the game and would make a huge quality of life addition to the game. Likewise, the ability to mark gear with a favorite icon so that it couldn't be broken down for materials without first removing that safety mark is also badly needed. The amount of loot players accumulate is staggering, and many times it all just starts to look the same, and that's when a player messes up and breaks down an item they didn't mean to. Once again, these two features are pretty standard in games of this genre, and players would welcome them both with open arms. Let's go ahead and end this one right here, and I once again wanted to invite you all to join my community Discord server for all things Outriders related. All you need to do is look in the video description, click on the Discord link, accept the rules, and you are in. Once there, we have channels for Outriders builds, photos, social areas, and of course, an LFG area where you can find other Discord members to squad up with. If you are needing a carry, advice on a build concept, or are just looking for other Outriders to squad up with, it is all there for you to use. In case you aren't yet a sub, please smash that sub button and don't forget to ring the bell to receive all future upload notifications from my channel. If you could take the time to rate and or share this video, it would be greatly appreciated. Don't forget to find me over on Twitch, join my aforementioned Discord server, and of course, follow me on Twitter, posting on most things gaming related. Until the next one, this is Lieutenant Buzz Lightbeer, signing off.